Erev Tov, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in 1981 in New York. I would like to welcome our viewers and listeners worldwide and our live Zoom studio audience to this evening's program in our Root and Branch Association Limited English Language Conference and Lecture Series, broadcasting from Jerusalem, Israel. And now celebrating our first quarter century, first 25 years from 1995 until 2020. Today is Thursday, September 3rd, 2020 in the Gregorian calendar, and the 15th day of Elul 5780 in the Israelite Hebrew calendar. We are broadcasting from the land of Israel, city of God, Jerusalem, hill of the priests, Givat Hanania Abu Tor, overlooking Mount Moriah, where we believe that the third and final Israelite temple of Jerusalem will soon be under reconstruction. As per the prophet Ezekiel's vision, please see chapters 40 through 48 and stand forever. The Root and Branch Association promotes the study and practice of universal Jewish teachings within the framework of the Universal Noahide Covenant and Laws. Please see Genesis chapter 9, and affirmation of God's land, Torah, and people covenants with his chosen people, Israel. Our speaker for this evening's program is an old friend, colleague, Rabbi Yehuda Lave, who will speak on, he will speak on how the rabbis and halacha have been affected by the Corona epidemic. And I would like to give a special thanks on behalf of Dr. Glassman and myself to our lifelong friend, the Budapester Rebbe teacher Larry Pfeffer, who put together this wonderful curriculum for our Zoom programming, which began on July 26th through Rosh Hashanah. And now I would like to welcome our program chair, Dr. Les Glassman, who will introduce Rabbi Lave.
Thank you, Lowell. And I want to second what you said on behalf of myself and you, Lowell. We really want to thank Larry Pfeffer for his tremendous work in getting such esteemed speakers like we have tonight. And Larry, we really appreciate it. So just a short introduction, because we could actually spend many hours just speaking about Yehuda Lave. First of all, we've known each other many years through the OU. You've come to many events, and you're a familiar face in the Jewish community here in Yerushalayim. But just a very brief introduction. Rabbi Yehuda Lave writes a daily, except for Shabbat and Jewish holidays, obviously, motivated Torah blog. And this is the blog at yehudalave.com. It's from Yerushalayim in Israel. And you're all, it's freely available, and it's possible to subscribe to the blog by sending an email. And Yehuda, I hope you don't mind that I'm going to give out your email, but I really strongly recommend that people do, because it's a phenomenal blog. The email is yehudalave, YEHUDALAVE, one word, @gmail.com. And I really recommend people writing to Yehuda and asking to be part of this incredible blog that I get and I treasure, and I really look forward to every day receiving. Rabbi Lave is an internationally known speaker, lecturer, and author. Your motto, Rav, is remember it only takes a moment to change your life. Learn to have all the joy in your life that you deserve. What a beautiful motto that is. Torah is the name of the game in Israel, with 3,500 years of mystics and scholars interpreting Hashem's word. Rabbi Lave is an author, esteemed author, a journalist, psychologist, rabbi, spiritual teacher, coach, and friend to many people as well. But he has degrees. You have degrees in business, psychology, Jewish and American law. What a resume have you got? Wow. You work with people from all walks of life, and you help them in their search for greater happiness, meaning, business advice on saving money, and spiritual questions. And tonight's talk is very, very relevant to all of us, how the rabbis and halacha have been affected by the Corona epidemic, which we daven for and we pray that Bezrat Hashem will come to an end soon. Without any further ado, we are eagerly anticipating your talk tonight. And the Rav has mentioned that you are all welcome to, after a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, to ask the questions to Rabbi Yehuda. So we really look forward to hearing your presentation. And without any further ado, I would like to, it's my honor and privilege to introduce Rabbi Yehuda Lave.
Thank you, Les, and thank you for your friendship. Les was the photographer of my wedding 3 years ago here in Jerusalem, across the street from where I am. It does look like I am on the beach, but I'm actually looking over the Temple Mount myself on King David Street across from the King David Hotel. And I go frequently to the Temple Mount and to the Old City, of course, since it's across the street. I work with a variety of people who are Temple Mount activists, including the famous Rabbi Yehuda Lave. This week we were twice at the Temple Mount asking, doors of the Temple Mount asking to be let into the temple to blow the shofar, but he was not able to blow the shofar. But today we were able to play the shofar sounds with the permission of the police at the gates on the Temple Mount itself. And if you look at my blog tomorrow morning, I hope that all these people, most of the people that are listening, of course, are all friends of mine that have the blog. But tomorrow morning, a picture of that blowing the shofar on tape will be on the blog. I will tomorrow morning be at 6 o'clock in the morning in Jericho with the army, where we will be blowing the shofar in the Avram Avinu show in Jericho itself, hoping that the walls will come down and the coronavirus come down with it, so that we will soon be done with the horrible 2020 that we've had. With the new Rosh Hashanah coming in, 5781, we're hoping for good things to come. My talk tonight couldn't be more timely, because here, for example, is the front page of today's newspaper, the Jerusalem Post. Unfortunately, I think with my background of the beach, the newspaper won't come through. I can't turn the background off, but if anybody gets the Jerusalem Post, I'm pointing to it now, you can't see it. Ganzu, top rabbi, endangering Haredim after call to avoid testing. Today's Jerusalem Post. Maybe to hold it back further. No, it gets wiped out by the background of my beach. But it's the front page of today's paper. The top story is now top rabbi endangering Haredim after call. And they're really trying to say in the story that they're not just endangering the Haredim, they're endangering everybody in Israel, because the virus in Israel is affecting 3,000 people a day that they test there. And here, Les is bringing it. So on his camera, we can see Les's camera. Show the paper, Les. Top story, down a little bit more. Up, Ganzu, top rabbi, endangering Haredim after call to avoid tests. So the rabbis are, thank you, Les. The rabbis are now in a position of being the most important person to be listened to each day. And when your mother said to become a rabbi, they thought you'd be giving little shares about what's going on in the Talmud. Usually people listen to these shares and they fall asleep, but to keep people up, they'll always take the most interesting topics in the Gemara. I won't mention any names, but we heard very recently a story about King David. And of course, they always like to tell the story about King David because it keeps people awake, because it's full of sex and violence and people doing things to each other. And the Talmud is not boring. It doesn't hide anything. It lets us know what's going on. Because we don't practice Torah Judaism directly, we practice Rabbinic Judaism. The Torah itself is a book that needs interpretation. And the interpretation comes from the rabbis. So we follow what the rabbis tell us that the book means. So I promised everybody you wouldn't fall asleep tonight. And the reason you won't is because it's no longer a simple system where you just recite back what you read in the Gemara. Today, for the first time, and since the Holocaust, there was a situation where people had to decide what does God want us to do when we couldn't eat and people were being murdered. Since the Holocaust, this is the most unusual time in Judaism. It's not from the Holocaust time and from the state of Israel. Rabbi Cook, before he passed away, was always giving us new things that had to be done since the state of Israel had been recreated in 2,000 years. And now for the first time, the rabbis have to come up with new ideas, what's going on in the world because of the corona. We've been thrown out of our shuls. No one would believe it in February that no one would go to a minyan. Every Orthodox boy is growing up, wouldn't miss a minyan if his life depended on it, unless he was so sick he couldn't go. And suddenly the state told us in Israel that you couldn't go to a minyan. If you couldn't go to minyan, how can you say Kaddish? I have taken upon myself say Kaddish every day for the 6 million that are from the Holocaust, because the Kulva rabbi taught us that from the since we are alive and we're here, we should speak Kaddish each day for those 6 million. How can I say Kaddish if I can't go to shul? For 19 days in Israel, we were under lockdown that we couldn't go to the shul. We could only leave the house to go for emergency shopping. And on the 20th day, the heavens opened back up and we were able to go back to the shul to say Kaddish and be with the minyan. We've been outside most of the time. Most of the time we are davening outside. And these new circumstances have come along that never have happened in our lives before. No Kaddish, not davening outside. And we are in a situation where we have to constantly make new decisions and new breaks. Les, I see you, so I think it's time to, before I make my next point, which I want to say is that the Gemara teaches that every dog has his day. It says it pretty much that way, that there comes a time when each person God creates to be in the right place at the right time. I mentioned to both Les and to Lowell that a police officer is trained to have a gun with him to be able to be responsible for security his whole career. He may, in 40 years, never have to pull the gun, but he absolutely has to be in a position that he is able to use it when necessary. Rabbis, their whole career, have been trained for this position. We've trained for the situation today when we can come up with new ideas how we handle what's going on with the corona. Les, can you mute people so I can see if there's any questions?
Unmute, okay. Lowell, if you can unmute.
Yes, hi.
Okay, if anybody has any comments or questions, I think it makes it very exciting and interesting.
Interactive.
And Rabbi Yehuda, you're very kind enough to entertain any questions or comments from anybody. So if anybody has any comments to suggest or questions to ask, please go ahead.
If not, I'll proceed with what I want to say in terms of what we've been able to do. So for the first time, again, if anybody's there, speak up. If not, Lowell will mute us again, and you can write a question on the Zoom chat.
You wanted questions or comments right now?
If anybody's got any, let's have them.
Oh, I've got one for you right now. After researching this matter since it began, I can state fairly clearly the masks are useless. They have nothing to do with medicine or science. This is about social and political control. The lockdowns are useless. In Holland and Sweden, the governments I repeat, the government's decided, after researching the matter, there's no medical basis for this. And they said, wait, Leela, I can't come on. I have to take care of this. Not now. He has to, that's my granddaughter. They're useless. The lockdowns are useless. And those countries are coming out of this. Just a second, I can't talk to you now, my granddaughter.
Okay, can I just add something, Rav?
Yes.
I don't know if it's so, there was the Czech Republic. They insisted on everyone wearing masks, and in Taiwan, in the very beginning, everybody wore masks. And there's a lot of top professors, especially in South Africa, Professor Barry Shub, who mentioned how to put on the mask in December even. And those who did wear masks, we see the results in the Czech.
Well,
it's very low incidence.
I don't want my talk to be about the mask because I can give 3 more hours about the mask and the shutdown. Everyone agrees that the shutdown was the greatest boondoggle. There's a story that came on the paper today that the effect of shutting down is 10 times worse in America than if they had not shut down. So
but the wearing of masks is open for
wearing the mask, my wife is Czech, so yes, they did wear the mask. That issue is not what we're talking about tonight. I'm not the expert on what happened. Nobody knows what's going on because of this virus. No one in the world has ever shut down synagogues and churches before, and the people are not complaining. There's a few places in California and in Dublin, and the people are starting to stand up and say, how can you shut down our synagogues? How can you shut down our churches? Yet the bars are open. That's not the point of this talk. We can go on that for many hours. So Lowell raised that, but Lowell has his privilege. He runs the thing. But I'm going to talk not about masks or about the shutdown because that's beyond my area of expertise. We have to get a higher pay level, as they say in the Army. You have to have a higher grade level for that. We can do that in a different talk. My talk tonight is how the virus has affected the fact, for the first time in my life, after studying for 40 years, you gave my long resume. It's because I'm an old man already. I've been studying for 40 years. When you study for 40 years, you learn a few things. I've been to many schools and have many degrees because I've lived a long time. If you live long enough, you're able to accomplish a great many things. God has to give you enough years. God only promises you 70, and we've seen that many people have not gotten it today because of halacha. So what we want to talk about is the fact that what's unusual. That's why I asked to give this talk first before a standard talk. Any rabbi can talk about the stories in the Gemara. I think I'm in an unusual position having the long resume that you mentioned, Les, that I've seen many uses of the law from a civil side as well too. And the law in Judaism is covered by the Shulchan Aruch. And the Shulchan Aruch has 4 sections to it. And each section tells us a different part of Jewish law. But what is not written down is the 5th Shulchan Aruch, which is called common sense. I've studied for many years. My principal teacher was Rabbi Ephraim Sprecher, and we always would talk about issues many times over the years that one has to have common sense in looking at what's going on. And we've seen good examples of that going on is that the fact that when the shuls and the synagogues were closed, and of course they closed the churches too, nobody said a word, but of course a Christian doesn't have a responsibility to say Kaddish every day. He's supposed to go to his church on Sunday, but he doesn't have a positive commandment to say Kaddish. We as Jews have a positive commandment to say Kaddish, and suddenly we couldn't have there was no minions that were allowed. The chief rabbis said, oh yeah, okay, you can try it on the radio, but everybody knew that it was not halakhically kosher for the Kaddish, but since we were locked up in the house, they made it best chance that they could. And that's the next point, is that who makes these decisions in these type of situations? In the times of Moses, it was simple. Moses tell us what to do. Moses isn't with us for 3,400 years. So we learn from the Gemara that God has passed on the baton to the rabbis. In conservative and Orthodox, in conservative and Reform Judaism, each shul and each organization makes up their own rules. But in Orthodoxy, the question is, we have a consensus normally of rabbis, because there is no chief rabbi. They have a title in some countries of chief rabbi of Poland, chief rabbi of Czech, the chief rabbi of Russia. We have chief rabbis in Israel, but they have no more authority than any other rabbi. Any rabbi can paskin and say what's going on, but we look to the tradition to say what tradition he follows. If he follows the Orthodox tradition, we follow his rules. The conservative and reform have their own rules. Whether it's right or wrong, they don't mind playing electronics on Shabbos, so they had no problem using Zoom. The first time it came about was that right after Purim. Purim is not a holiday where you cannot, where you don't have to turn off the television or your phone. Only the first holiday that came up since the virus started was Pesach, and the conservative and reform said no problem, we'll put the seders on Zoom, except that of course we can't in Orthodoxy, because in Orthodoxy we don't use electronics on Shabbos or on Zoom or on Hagim. So using common sense, I suggested that we should do a trial Seder the night before. I think the Seder was on Thursday night this year, if I recall. So I said, let's do a trial Seder on Wednesday night so that the grandparents and the kids can see each other on Zoom, because this virus was so unusual at the beginning. Nobody knew what was going on. All we knew was that children were not being affected as much. They were carriers, but the virus was much more serious for anybody over 60. So for the first time in their lives, children couldn't be with, and grandchildren couldn't be with their grandparents. Everybody did a Seder themselves, and they wanted to be together, but they couldn't. So they were in the position. I brought out the post before, Les, you brought out the post before. In the post, they put in a story that the Orthodox rabbis allowed the Zoom. The next day, of course, the story was retracted. It turns out that there is a Sephardic position that is not the general position that's accepted, that you could use the Zoom on Pesach. So there started to be fights back and forth in the newspaper. Newspapers love to have rabbis fighting with each other. It makes us all look bad. And that primarily is the way that Jews are made fun of, because one rabbi will say one thing and next day a different one will say something else. So we're very lax to make public opinions. In fact, most rabbis won't paskin to say what to do because they have no incentive to do so. If they say something and they're misunderstood, the next day they may lose their job. So I work for myself. I'm not afraid to say what I think, because nobody's going to fire me because I do this for free. That's the main advantage of doing it for free. Nobody can fire you. However, if you are, I'm published by a variety of papers, the Jewish Press, Times of Israel. If I make a article that's too controversial or the editor doesn't like it, they nix the article. My blog, and that's why I want everybody to sign up for the blog. Nobody can X me. I put it out myself, and I put it out myself, and nobody says that I'm wrong. And as you can see, Jonathan saw that I should have, Jonathan Weber said I should give some more sites. I have constantly friends saying I made a spelling error. I work in this blog 6 hours a day, and believe me, it's not easy to get it out without mistakes. And to get it out each morning, comes out of Jerusalem at 4:15 in the morning, because there's a principle in the Gemara that says the Torah will come from Jerusalem. I'm trying to fulfill that position by getting the Torah to come out from Jerusalem every morning at 4:15, which I do. So you get it in America in the evening. Here we get it in 4:15. People read it before they go to shul, and that way we have discussions, and I have new comments, and I learn from my participants all the time what goes on. Anyway, we move on to the fact that we didn't know what to do with the Zoom. So we ended up not using the Zoom, of course, because Jewish law says we can't use the electronics on a Pesach or on a holiday or Hag, which is why my blog doesn't go out on that day, because I can't have the computer. Even if I could set it off electronically to go beforehand, it's against the halacha for people to turn on their computer to read it. So I don't want to tempt the people to do so. So I make sure I don't send it out in those times. Sometimes the computer makes a mistake, but that's out of my control. That's within the Shem. So at Pesach, the main thing came out for the first time. And how did people make decisions? The rabbis of the individual shuls told people what to do, and they got along through Pesach. Purim had already come and gone. Many of the virus was spread at the time by people at the Purim time, but Pesach was the first holiday, and people for the first time in their lifetimes had to be alone. Again, it's not a good comparison to the Holocaust. People were dying in the Holocaust. Nobody died, but for many people, they weren't with their grandchildren. They weren't with their friends. They had to do it alone. They were shut down. It was a very difficult Pesach. And everybody hoped when May would roll around, things would be better. They are better. The lockdown stopped. They let us all out. 50% of the people lost their jobs in a lot. There's been no tourists coming into Israel since the beginning of March. And the economy runs on tourism. The hotels are empty. The people many people have lost their jobs. There's been a tremendous hassle and time, but people have struggled on through 6 months, which is why people are looking forward so much to Rosh Hashanah coming, because in Rosh Hashanah, we know that God makes the plan for the coming year, and everybody is praying that the coming year God will have more mercy on us, and we'll have a situation where people won't have so much stress. As I said last 10 times, it says in the various articles that 10 times more people are suffering from depression, from loss of their jobs, from many things happening than ever that are suffering from the virus. The virus actually, in many countries, has not killed as many people as their normal death rate is. While people are getting the virus, and it's not a fake virus, it's a virus that is at this point not a plague of biblical proportions, but we have treated in the countries like it is a biblical plague and taking those effects. So we are back in Shul in a form of an outdoor minyan. I daven every morning outdoors. It, of course, is hot days some days and cold other days. In February in Jerusalem, it's still cold. When I was davening outside in February, it was very hard to put my tefillin on because I had to keep my jacket on. So this is an example. Your whole life, nobody would tell you. For 60 years, people put on their tefillin every day, and all of a sudden you're standing outside and it's 40 degrees outside, and it's too cold to have without a coat. So what do? You put your tefillin on inside, put your coat on, you go outside, and then you go back inside to take off your coat when it warms up. We've had the reverse situation now. Now every day in Jerusalem it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, about 40 degrees centigrade each day, and it's hot. But if we daven early, most of the time we daven early in the minyans before it gets warm. We might have started davening at 9 o'clock before on Shabbos, but now we're davening at 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 6:30. Let's see if we've got any more questions now.
All right. If anybody has any comments or questions or
not about masks or about shutdowns. Let's talk about halacha.
Okay. We're all spellbound with your talk.
Okay, very good. All right. So the main thing I've been writing about in my articles for the last 6 months is that, and it's been controversial because most people won't say it, this virus, whatever it is, has affected people over 60 much more than people under 60. So many people don't go out of their house. They stay home. They won't go to shul daven. They daven alone. They've never done this before, but they feel if they go out that they are in a position of danger, so they stay home. Again, as I said before, in Pesach, they're not seeing their grandchildren. They're not seeing their children. They're not, if they had any work, they're not going to it because the newspapers have frightened them to say if they go out, they are much more at risk. I don't know if they are or they aren't, but that's what people have done. So this creates a situation where for the first time in my lifetime, that we are in a situation where there's two classes of people, those over 60 and those under 60. That's the reality. Because we're told that those over 60 have much more risk. All right? So that being the case, how does it affect halacha? And that's why I'm excited about this talk, because as I said, for the first time in my career, I'm not just spouting back what I learned from reading the Gemara and studying. I'm actually able to make a difference in terms of making a decision. So the main things that came up that were different, besides davening outside and our start times and suffering through hot and cold, is the fact that we have had 4 fast days since this has all started. And the laws about fasting are pretty clear because we learned them, but again, the halacha doesn't change, the situation does. And because somebody with a background like mine who can see the differences that go on, I'm ready to say that there's something that is different that is then has come up on a usual time. And in the 4 fasts we had, the fast of Esther, Tisha B'Av, 17th of Tammuz, and now we're coming up to fast of Gedola after Rosh Hashanah. The laws about fasting are the fact that if somebody is sick, that they don't fast because they don't want, the idea of fasting is to get close to God, but God doesn't want any dead bodies. He wants live bodies to proclaim him king. That's what we do on Rosh Hashanah. We proclaim God king. So what has been I said during the times before the Holocaust is not the first time we've had a plague. We've had a situation where it came up before there was what Rabbi Salanter spoke in the 1840s about a situation where there was a plague, and he taught us that it was much more important. Let me just make this point first. There are 5 rabbinic fasts and only 1 Torah fast. The only Torah fast is, of course, Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur, the rabbis interpret what it means to suffer, as opposed to think about, get close to God, but we're told it means not to fast, which means not to eat or drink, not to wear leather, not to have relationships, not to have marital relations, not to wash on Yom Kippur. The 5 other fasts are taken from the fast of Yom Kippur. Only Tisha B'Av is a 24-hour fast. The other 4 fasts are day fasts, and only Tisha B'Av also is a situation where you don't wash. The other ones we do wash during the 4 fasts. So we try to get close to God in these fasts, but we've got a situation where the doctors have said people over 60 are more at risk. And if they're more at risk, it's just common sense to say that if they are not drinking and it's 100 degrees outside or 40 degrees centigrade, they are more liable to have heat stroke. I mean, it doesn't take a great brain to figure that out. And it's compounded by the fact that in a normal situation, if a person gets heat stroke, luckily they'll call 911 and then Israel 100, and the ambulance will take them to the hospital and they'll be recuperated. However, the stories tell us each day, and I'm sure it's the same in Hutz Lawrence, that the hospitals are full. They have no place to bring the person. So the person may sit for several hours waiting to be taken care of from heat stroke, and heat stroke now becomes a death sentence. So if a situation is where for normally a person would fast because he's he may be a little sick. His situation is now for those over 60, they should not fast because they're putting themselves at risk. People under 60 are relatively unaffected, but for people over 60, there's a new class. And for that reason, even though the rabbis haven't said it, I would have said, based on everything that's going on, it's common sense that a person over 60 can't fast on the rabbinic fast. Again, when we don't fast, we follow certain rules. We don't go out in public and boast to people that we're not fasting. You shouldn't see people sitting in a restaurant on a fast day with kippahs on, eating and drinking like it's a normal day. We eat and drink privately because of our own personal medical conditions or our own personal situations. This is the halakha. But what has changed is that even if a person is perfectly healthy, anybody over 60 should not be fasting on the rabbinic fast. Notice I'm leaving Yom Kippur off yet at this point because we haven't got to Yom Kippur, but we've had three fasts with the fourth one coming up on after Rosh Hashanah, the fast of Gedalia, and one is in a situation, it'll probably be hot again, and if you are not going to drink, you're going to put yourself in a position where your body's at risk, and the only place the Torah says twice to be very, very careful is in taking care of one's health. So there seems to be a conflict between taking care of one's health and fasting. And in this case, the rabbis tell us that taking care of one's health wins. So people over 60 do have a new rule that even though they may have kept Tisha B'Av their whole lives, that they shouldn't be fasting because they're putting themselves in a position of sakana, danger. The rabbis said, they gave us 10 rules, that this was a consensus, that people who are pregnant shouldn't be fasting, they are nursing, if they're sick, anyone sick with corona, even if they're feeling healthy and not bedridden, anyone with corona symptoms such as loss in cell and taste and difficulty breathing, anyone with a high risk group for COVID, as listed on the CDC website and other health ministries. In this case, it certainly includes anyone over 60, even if they have no health conditions, because they are at risk from this particular virus. And the sixth one is anyone who has a specific medical worry from the illness and has discussed with doctor and instructed them not to fast. And then in general, even if we have many people now in quarantine, even if they are not having the virus because they go into quarantine to see if they're going to develop any symptoms, and they're at home. And certainly if they're not in a normal situation where they're in quarantine and they can't go out, they're in the position where on the rabbinic fast, they would also not be fasting. But for a person over 60, he's actually putting himself at risk by fasting, and no one says he has to have a steak dinner, but he has to have a light meal, he has to have water. This is the halakha. It's very similar to a situation recently where on a Friday night, I cut myself very seriously and I was bleeding and my arm was swelled up. I never had been in a position of breaking Shabbos before, but it was not breaking Shabbos to go to the emergency room to be taken care of. That is part of Shabbos. Part of Shabbos is to keep the Shabbos by having an emergency situation, go to the emergency room to be taken care of. Not going to the emergency room because of Shabbos and dying is not what God is looking for. Shabbos itself includes the ability to not keep Shabbos when you are in danger. And fasting is in the same situation. By fasting when you're in danger, you're breaking God's rule. Now notice I've talked about the 5 rabbinic fasts. I didn't speak about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, again, is controlled by the rabbis to tell us what to do. And it's much more serious. It's the only fast, people thought that Tisha B'Av was serious. Tisha B'Av is no more serious than the 4 other fasts, but Yom Kippur is more serious because It's not a fast declared by the rabbis. It's a fast from the Torah. So there is a provision in the laws Yom Kippur to be in, and now this has to be listened to carefully because people will listen to what somebody says and say, oh, Rabbi Lave says you don't have to fast on Yom Kippur. I didn't say that. What I say is that there is a position that the law teaches us that if you eat a little bit or drink a little bit over a period of time, it's called eating and drinking. The rabbis tell us, just like in law, what the definition of eating and drinking is. If you have a less than a amount of kasayas that you drink over a period of time, this is not considered eating or drinking or eating the same amount. If you eat a little bit for strength and drinking, you're in that position. Nothing is new about that in terms of for sick people. This is what people do. What's new, what I'm saying, and what the new halacha is that if somebody's over 60 and they feel bad in any case, or they have the virus or the physician, they should be using this, what we call a loophole for not eating or drinking. We don't normally do this. A person who is not sick could do the same thing, but we don't consider that as halacha. If one is on an IV, that's not eating or drinking it either. It has to go through the mouth and tongue and lips and throats to be eating and drinking. So somebody could easily say, I'll hook myself up to an IV for water and I won't get dehydrated. We don't allow that for a healthy person. We do allow, give it for a person who is sick. If he's on an IV, it's still considered fasting. And if he's not on an IV, if he's sick or in any situation, this loophole of eating and drinking, even on Yom Kippur, should be put to the test if somebody is sick. On the 5 other rabbinic fasts, it wasn't even necessary to get to that point. And that's why the very famous story from the 1840s, when there was this a plague in Europe, the Rabbi Salanter, the famous rabbi who was the teacher of the Midos and how to be things right, got up on the bima on Yom Kippur, and he made kiddush for eating and drinking on Yom Kippur. He was in the position that there was so much danger. We don't think we're in that much danger today, but he was in a position of so much danger that he didn't want people to use the loophole of Shirayim, of the little bit of eating and drinking. He wanted them actually to be sure to eat and drink, and he was afraid because people take Yom Kippur so seriously, just like they took Tisha B'Av so seriously, that they would not take care of themselves. So in that situation, it was Yom Kippur, and he felt even Yom Kippur, which was the Torah fast, was not important enough to overcase the risk. And that's why it's easy to pass him from the fact that if he felt that way in Yom Kippur, the rabbis who make the decisions on the fasting for the five rabbinic fasts can certainly say that we are in a position that they shouldn't be held, and that includes the fast coming up after Rosh Hashanah, which will be on Monday, the fast of Gedalia. That in that position, because they are in a sakana situation, and to be over 60, they are taking their lives at risk by drinking and eating in that fast. And so in that fast, they could eat and drink regularly, but on Yom Kippur, if one isn't tremendously sick, one should take the loophole on Yom Kippur. All right, now I've said a few controversial things. Let's break again and see if anybody has any questions.
Okay. I don't know if any, we all spellbound with your talk, right?
Well, thank you.
I don't buy it. Can I say something? It is
Yes.
not, it's not like you turn 60 and all of a sudden you're not healthy. Traditionally, people, as they get older, they develop other conditions. There are people who are 50 who are not well, and there are people who are 70 who are healthy and
Absolutely, but that's what makes this virus unusual. People are more at risk This is what they said today. Look, as Lowell says, he doesn't believe in the mask, people in the shutdowns. I'm not in a position to say yes or no on that. That's not what this, I'm not saying this talk. If you read my blog, I'm very strongly against many of the things too, but I certainly don't know. All I know is the doctors say that if you're over 60, you're in a more risk situation. Now, we can deny it, but, unfortunately, the clock doesn't change, and therefore, in my opinion, for halacha, and this is what's controversial, and that's why I'm saying it, I'm not going to be fired by anybody because I'm my own boss. I have stated that I think it's against halacha to keep these 5 rabbinic fasts. The Yom Kippur fast is a different situation. Of course, we try to be healthy. Of course, we want to live as long. But the virus is more dangerous for people over 60, according to the doctors. As a result, as a rabbi, my job is to say, since it's more dangerous, one should not take the chance on these fast days. There's no difference from anything else. There are some things. One has to be, if one's sick, you're not supposed to go to the minyan and infect other people. And in this situation, there are 2 classes of citizens, those under and over 60. As a result, those people have a position. I agree with you, Deborah. We could hopefully be healthy to 120, but that's not what the Torah law is teaching us. The Torah law is teaching us that if you're over 60, one should not fast on these fast days, on the rabbinic fast days, because the rabbis make the rules, and this is a rule that the person is more at risk on this situation. Again, don't go out and have a steak. If you feel good, stay home and do what you want on your own. But the Torah law is now changed, and this is why in our whole lifetimes, and this is why it's so exciting. I don't know if there'll ever be another period like this the rest of my life, but during this time, when the rabbis say it's dangerous, I'm saying that something unusual, something's here. One has to make a different position, and I think it's quite dramatic, and that's why I write about it, and that's why I wanted to give this talk for people to understand.
Okay, is this a 10-minute break for comments and questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
there is.
Okay, good.
Deborah talk.
Now, regarding the masks.
No, I want to avoid the mask role because if we talk about the mask, we don't have time for anything else. Let's skip masks for now. I want to talk about halacha. Skip masks for now, okay? I know if we get on the subject of masks, we could be talking for an hour on the mask. Skip the mask for now, please. Let's agree that people, I agree with you, but that's not the point of the talk tonight. Many people love the mask because they feel comfort from it. There's no point in talking about it. We can't change anything about that. Let's stick to halacha, about fasting, about Torah, and things that have changed because of the halacha and because of the virus in the Torah world. Sorry to shut you down. Next, anybody else?
Okay, Rabbi, you can continue.
You have to unmute them, right? You have to unmute them. I see people.
Allow if you can mute.
So can I ask something?
Yes, Larry.
So if you're over 60, but you feel that you're of sound health, like, some people your last guest said that, some people feel.
Who's a good friend of mine?
Yes. So I'm approaching that age very soon. And, I'm able to go to the gym and maybe run a few miles. And I feel relatively, young in health, and thank God, Baruch Hashem. So I have to put myself in that statistical category once I reach 68?
Once you reach 60, yes. Because the doctors have said that people over 60 are more at risk. Simple as that. No matter how healthy.
But that's a statistical. That's a statistics. They're talking statistics there.
They are talking statistics, but they're talking based upon the virus. So the smart thing to do, which is what I do, is stay home and see how you feel and skip it. You can be more machmir on yourself. And Torah term says you on yourself, you can be more, you can be as strict as you want. You can fast 12 days a week if you want to. But the question is on the halacha, the question is people shouldn't feel that they have to fast in a situation when the law has changed for this year. It's only for this year. We don't know what next year's going to bring. We don't know if they'll tell us that people over 60 are not any more at risk or not. But right now they say that people over 60 are more at risk. It's a simple black and white fact. And as a result, since the Torah says you have to guard yourself very carefully, it's like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. You can't take risks with your body. God says, I gave you this body, and it's there for you to keep health. And if you're over 60, you're at more risk. So, if you want to be more machmir, stay home, rest, don't eat and drink in a situation if you feel fine. But if you don't feel fine, you may have put yourself more at risk. And therefore, it's important to know that you are actually breaking the rules by fasting, because the fast does not apply to you if you're over 60 years old. It doesn't apply to you if you're 30 years old and you're sick. If you're in Bedud, it doesn't apply to you. During the period of time when people were in Bedud, the rabbis ruled that they could listen to music during the 3-week period, because they couldn't go out normally. They couldn't do what they normally do. You can't have it both ways. If we're in a period of plague, one has to be more careful. And the next year, if you want to fast again, when we're not under a situation, if you're 63 or 75, I know a lot of very good, healthy 75-year-olds. The President of the United States is 73 or 4. Some of my best friends are 75, and they're in great shape. But if they're fasting at 75, they're going against the Torah law, which this year is we're in a position, and this is why I feel for the first time in my life I could say something original. Normally I say we're just parroting back what we learn, what we study. We study the same thing every year for 40 years. This is the original thing that's happened for this year when it comes to the fasting, which has gone on. You follow me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
I hear you. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else? All right, so I think I made my main points. Let's see if I've got something else to say. Not easy to carry on a conversation for an hour, but when it comes from your heart like this one does, where people, don't want to actually say anything, they beat around the bush. They say, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. It's very hard to tell people something that's new. I had a lot of good friends, and they're approaching 80, and I said, don't fast on Tisha B'Av. And the guys looked at me, I fasted my whole life on Tisha B'Av. I'm going to keep on fasting. Well, he's actually breaking the rule because we're in a period of time when we're in danger. So normally fasting may not be more dangerous for an older person. In fact, the doctors say, fasting may be good for you sometimes, but it actually, of course, puts you in a different situation, puts you at risk. And during this time for this year, we'll see what 5781 has to bring in 2021, if that's what's going on for this year. That's my main points I want to make. Now again, except for masks and for shutdowns, because that's a different discussion, I'm ready to take any more questions, and Lowell can close if he wants.
Could I make a comment? Right?
Yes, of course, let's.
So we had an interesting development in our family. My niece, who lives in Israel, she, Baruch Hashem, she gave birth to a very healthy baby girl. And unfortunately, my sister and brother-in-law and family in South Africa couldn't be at the birth and couldn't be at the naming of the baby. So they asked their Rav, who actually happens to be in Cape Town in South Africa, from Wassenaar, and they came up with a wonderful idea that they'll do a Zoom shiur that everybody will watch, and then the father, my niece's husband, the father of the baby, will also speak a little bit, and then they'll name the baby via the Zoom after having the shiur, and that's what they did. And I think it's a novel way that everybody could hear the naming of the baby.
It's
and
a
it wasn't
beautiful
done
way.
in shul, but
It's
it
a
was done
beautiful
over the
way. It's a beautiful way. There's nothing against halacha unless it was on Shabbos or on Hag. And as I said, when we had the situation for Pesach, I came up with the idea to do a practice one before. There's no problem with using Zoom on a Wednesday. It was not a Hag. There's no problem with using etc. There is a problem. We're going to come to the shofar now. I can speak about that for a minute. The shofar, like the Megillah, has to be heard directly. So people are going to say you can do it over Zoom or you can hear it. It's not the halakha. But if you can't go to shul and you can't hear it live, you're not meeting the requirements, but your heart's in the right place, God is going to forgive you for doing the best you can and listening to it on not on the Hag itself, because you're not supposed to use electronics. On the Hag, it's better not to hear the shofar than to hear it electronics. But the day before, the day after, you can listen to a tape or YouTube, and you were in a position that you were forgiven from the mitzvah of listening to the shofar because you couldn't go. But if there's a way to go to the shul safely, they're talking in the paper again today. They may tell us tomorrow that we're shut down for Rosh Hashanah and that you can't leave your house for Rosh Hashanah. If you can't leave your house for Rosh Hashanah, you're forgiven from the mitzvah of having to hear the shofar because there is a position that you're not able to fulfill the purpose. You can't break the law. You can't get a ticket on the street for going to shul if they don't allow us to, if we're in a shutdown. God, they hope don't do it, and they're modifying the things at the show. I saw that the rabbis are proposing quick services instead of the usual 5-hour Rosh Hashanah service. This year is going to be a 2-hour service, and they'll have three settings. Like being on a ship, when they have 3 dinner servings, there'll be 3 servings. There'll be 3 services. 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 10 o'clock for Rosh Hashanah to get everybody in and out. How that's going to work for Yom Kippur at Nila when everybody wants to be in the shul and hear the shofar blast at Nila, they haven't worked out yet. But the frustration of purpose is a legal doctrine and is true in Torah law as well. So that's a beautiful thing that they did with naming the baby, and that's the situation that we're at with what's going on. All right.
Okay, are there any other comments?
If you unmute everybody, then we can close if there's no more comments.
Okay.
Can I just say something too?
Yes.
It was nice for Pesach when I forget what time it was, everyone went out on their balconies and did the
It
Manishtana.
was
That
8
was
o'clock.
beautiful.
Right.
Maybe they could do something like that too with the shofar blowing so that people could just go
Exactly.
outside in their courtyards and hear it, even though they're not able to go to shul,
That's a
especially
wonderful
women.
idea.
There's a program going on that somebody's promoting that everybody's going to blow the shofar at 11 o'clock. I hope it's going to be on Sunday, not on Saturday. This year Rosh Hashanah is on Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, we don't blow at all because we don't blow the shofar if it's on a Saturday. So we're talking about on Sunday, they may have a program. So at 11 o'clock on Sunday, if you hear the shofar blowing, it's part of the worldwide event. Again, I participate with Shofar So Great and other people in the shofar programs. We want to get everybody to hear the shofar, but it has to be according to halakha, not on Shabbos. We still follow the Orthodox rules, even though we have to adjust some things. The laws teach us that when Rosh Hashanah comes, it's 2 days. We don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. We blow it only on Sunday. All right? Lesson Lowell, I'm turning over to you.
Okay. Now, should I do the closing? Okay, so I just want to make a final comment here. First of all, Rav, your shir was absolutely incredible, and we learned so much. And you just see how Torah can adapt, and the learnings and our great Rabbonim can actually move with the times. And these are new times and difficult times. And we really all want to thank you very much for your insights and your blog that you do every day that we so appreciate.
Thank you.
And really thank you very much for making the time and effort to be here tonight. And we just want to wish everybody who joined in this live.
And a shout out to all my friends. Aaron joined me. I haven't seen him in 10 years in San Diego. I see Fred, Fred is on the list. I don't know if he's there. People I haven't spoken to for many years. I hope we'll do it again soon, Lowell. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
There's only so much time that we have in a point, and I want to keep the share to the point of Halacha and Torah and not get sidetracked by the many issues that people are all feeling. Believe me, I feel them too, and I address many of them on the blog.
Well, Rab, thank you very much, and we are extremely grateful to you. We just want to wish everybody to be well and safe. A Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov, and a Shana Tova, Gmar Chesima Tova.
Shana Tova, everybody.
Okay, thank you.